Well, hello and welcome, everybody. This is your host of the Heal It Show, KenDFoster. I'm so glad you joined us today. Every time I do this show, I'm so inspired, and I hope you are, and I hope you're sharing this with your family and friends. Today, we're going to be talking about rebuilding your life after the storm. Listen, a lot of people have gone through a lot of great challenges here in the last year. I think one of my guests said we had 27 national crises over the last 12, 13 months now. So I know a lot of you are rebuilding, re-energizing, reigniting. You have to reignite yourself to be able to get through some of these challenges. And, you know, this show is dedicated to that. This show is here to help you to tune into maybe a higher purpose, right? What's a higher purpose? Well, you know, when you go through a challenge and a tragedy, you know, and once you get past the grief and, realize the anger, you get to a place where you go, okay, it's time. I'm going to have to rebuild this. Well, sometimes we tune in and we learn that, you know, there's a purpose for all of this, right? It didn't just happen by happenstance, right? And that purpose, when you get in touch with it, a lot of times our purpose is that we have to grow. We have to learn. We have to evolve ourselves, our thinking. We have to maybe increase our faith in God, increase our faith in the unseen, so that we can start to evolve into a place where we can thrive again. We can really feel good again about ourselves and our lives. Listen, some of you have lost homes. Some of you have lost family and friends out there. Some of you have lost children. And, you know, it's hard. Listen, I don't claim to be, the expert in your life. What I'm here for, and what my guest is here for, is to help you understand that there is hope after the darkness. There is light. There is joy. There is lots of things that can come to you. But I think one of the things that we need to do is to start, renew a mindset of growth. Right. So it's a growth mindset. It's like, you know, maybe you were in a place where you felt, you know, everything is perfect. Everything is great. I don't know why it all fell apart. Well, it might have fallen apart because it's time to grow. It's time to learn. It's time to step into a new you, which is one of the things you can do is tune into these shows, because I bring in guests that can help you to grow yourself, grow your mind, grow your life, grow your family. That's what we do here on the Heal It Show. You know, I found this. There's always cause and effect. We live in a world of cause and effect, right? And, you know, a lot of times the cause is not where we can see it, right? We have to take a deep dive under the surface to find what is the cause. You know, sure, we can see outside of ourselves. Yeah, somebody lit a match somewhere and my house burned down. That's the cause. But there's something deeper there. I'm talking about the cause for you, tapping into how you can get to the cause and create new effects in your life, right? New effects. Tune into the power, the passion, the love, the joy that's in your life, and create some new effects. And you can do that by tuning into the unseen and knowing the unknowable to be able to do the impossible. All right, I got an amazing guest on my show, and I'm going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to introduce her to you. So we will be right back.
Whether because of discomfort, lack of mobility, your lifestyle, or occupation, you sit inactively way too many hours a day. Introducing Ellipse, the premium quality automatic seated exerciser that strengthens legs, increases mobility, and boosts circulation without physical strain or impact.
It is so quiet that none of my coworkers even know I'm using it.
Strengthen and tone your legs, increase your mobility, flexibility, and balance. Plus, stimulate healthy circulation.
My joints feel better, my knees feel better, my back feels better. It makes me feel stronger too.
Perfect for home therapy. Whisper quiet to use while you work.
My circulation is moving, I'm burning calories, and it makes me feel energetic.
Call now and order Ellipse, the seated exerciser that strengthens legs, increases mobility, and boosts circulation. Call and get upgraded to the deluxe bundle. Get the faster motor or 5 miles of steps per hour, the step counter, the sport mat, and wireless remote. Call now.
Back, everybody. This is your host, KenDFoster, and I'm so happy to introduce my guest, Dawn Sanders. Dawn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Ken, for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you on this show, too. For those of you that don't know Dawn, she is a graduate of Bethel Seminary. She graduated summa cum laude, which is amazing. She's a speaker. She's an author, an associate minister at the First Baptist Church, Glenarden International, where she serves as a director of sermon-based life group ministry. Her passion is expository teachings and sharing that combines her deep scholarship with practical application to help women rebuild their lives. Her debut book, When Your World Ends, God's Creative Process for Rebuilding a Life, offers hope, guidance, and love for those facing many challenges. Wow, I'm excited. It's a great book. It's a great title. You're stepping into doing God's work and as a minister and being able to be out there. And, it's not easy, when you lose loved ones. Let's talk a little bit about your story and what happened to you, Dawn.
Well, I met a man and I got married, and the man happened to be Muslim and I'm Christian. Mm-hmm. And we, from almost the very beginning, had conflict in our relationship. The more he tried to persuade me to become Muslim, the more I went to learn about my faith, and I found answers. And the more I found answers, the stronger I held to my faith. And so that created conflict, and ultimately he divorced me. Fast forward several years, I'm at church and I meet another gentleman in our church doctrine class. And he asked me if we can get to know each other better. And so we start to get to know each other better, fall in love, decide to get married. And we said, because this was late in life too, because, I'd already been divorced. So we didn't start seeing each other until we were 40 years old. By the time we got married, we were 42. And to be quite honest, Ken, I had come to terms with the fact that I might not have children before he and I got into our relationship. But he was a youth pastor and he very much wanted to have kids. And he helped me basically revive that dream of having children. But I said to him, even though we're not getting married until I'm 42 years old, is it okay if we don't try actively? We didn't do anything to prevent it, but I just knew a lot of people who got pregnant like right away and spent their first year like with morning sickness and all of that. And I really just wanted to enjoy him. Sure. And so for 1 year, we didn't try, and God was gracious. We didn't get pregnant. And then we started trying, and we got married in March. And so that summer, I believe I had my first pregnancy. I say I believe because I didn't have a chance to confirm it. I had many of the symptoms, but I didn't have a positive pregnancy test. But then if I was pregnant, I lost that child. Then 3 more months? Fast forward another 3 months. I'm pregnant again. This time I get to get a positive pregnancy test. And that time I said to myself, okay, now I know for sure I'm pregnant. Yeah. And though it was painful to lose that pregnancy, and I don't want to minimize that, I actually took it as a sign that here I was, now 43 because my birthday had come by, that we could get pregnant and, trusting that, in time we would have a child. Fast forward another few months and I get pregnant again, and we're very excited. And then on his birthday, 6 months after this first miscarriage, we miscarry a second time. We're super because, possibly 3 times, but definitely twice.
Yeah.
And then we're devastated because it's happened twice, and not just twice, but in a row. And we're like confused. God, what is going on? We thought we were the kind of people, a minister and a youth pastor that you would want to give children to. We thought we were a little special. But anyway, we got over that quickly because of the second miscarriage. And then 6 weeks after the second miscarriage, my husband died suddenly.
Wow. Okay. So this is tragic. All right. So you miscarried 3 times, going through that grief, that loss, that only a mom would know, how that feels. And now you've lost the love of your life. And now you're in total sadness and total grief.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And along with him, the dreams that I had for a family,
Yeah.
I felt like died with him, at least a family from my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. This is deep. All right. So how does one recover from such great loss?
Wow. That's a good question, because I don't think I had the best journey, right? But I learned along the way. So like when you were saying in your introduction about growing, I grew along the way.
Yeah.
And I say that because my initial reaction was complete devastation.
Yeah.
I remember waking up morning after morning after morning and asking God the night before to take me to, because when God took my husband, I realized that he made 2 decisions that day. Not only did he decide to take my husband, but he decided to leave me. And so I went to sleep every night for months asking God to take me to. Now, don't get me wrong. I wasn't suicidal in the sense of I was willing to do anything to hurt myself, and I didn't do anything to hurt myself. But if God was going to take me overnight, I wasn't going to be upset about it. And my reasoning with that comes from the book of Jonah, because I believe that Jonah, for those of you who are not familiar with the story, Jonah fled from God. God told Jonah to go to Nineveh, and Jonah didn't want to go. And he didn't want to go to Nineveh because the people in Nineveh tortured his people. And so he believed if he went to Jonah, that they would torture him at the least, if not kill him. And so he ran in the opposite direction to keep from going to Nineveh. And he ran as far as he could and came to the Mediterranean Sea. And then he got on board a ship. And while he was on board that ship, he thought that was going to be his means of escape, that he was going to be able to sail into the sunset. But Jonah wasn't able to sail into the sunset because God sent a storm to disrupt his voyage. And when the sailors on the ship were questioning, why is this happening? Jonah admitted, he said, it's because of me. God's angry with me because I'm not doing what he told me to do. And so Jonah said, if you guys want to be okay on the rest of your voyage, you need to throw me into the sea. Now, they had been at sea at least a day, so they weren't in what I consider to be shallow water. So I fully think that Jonah expected to die. And so when Jonah told them to throw him into the sea, he thought he was going to drown, but he didn't drown. God sent a great fish to swallow him, and Jonah spent the next 3 days in the belly of that fish. And some scholars believe that after spending 3 days in the belly of that fish, that the outer skin of his body would have been damaged, which, skinning alive, is the torture that Jonah was fleeing from. That was the Ninevites' favorite torture, was to skin the Israelites alive. And so Jonah, instead of dying, right, was swallowed by this fish. And he came to his senses after 3 days that he realized God was not going to allow him to die. And that's why I was not willing to try to kill myself, because I don't believe the power of life and death is ultimately in my hands. Now, I have the power to hurt myself, right? And Jonah wound up in a worse situation because of being in the belly of that fish for 3 days than he would have been if he did, not have been in the belly of that fish. So I do believe we can attempt to hurt ourselves and hurt ourselves, but ultimately whether we live or die is not our decision. It's God's decision. And the pain of dealing with my husband's death was the most I was willing to deal with. I wasn't willing to cause myself any more harm or any more pain than what I was already enduring.
Yeah. Well, I love that story and the story of Jonah. And as you were talking about it, I was, just thinking about, when we're swallowed up by grief and we go down into the depth of the ocean with the whale. and we and it's under there that we do die. We die to the old, and as we can die to the old, that's when we can rise back up. That's when we can be released from the belly of the beast, so that we can rise back up into a new life, and we don't get the new life though when we're holding on to the old. If we're holding on to the woulda, coulda, shoulda been, the grief, the worry, my future's gone, then we just stay stuck. But at one point, then we go, well, I'm sick and tired of feeling grief and sick and tired of dying every day. I think maybe I'm going to do something different. and that's exactly. We get to rise back up. Listen, I got to take a quick break. And, when we come back up, you and I were talking a little bit about Genesis and, a little bit about the path of the Genesis with your story. And I think that relates to our audience. So I'd like to talk about that when we get back from the break. We'll be right back.
Imagine this is your money and someone wants to take it from you. Who is it? The IRS. Guess what? They want your money and they can take it, all of it if they want. Remember, they sent you that letter right over here that said, hey, you owe us a bunch of cash and we're going to take it from you right now. So what do? You fight back by letting our team of experts work it out with the IRS so you can keep your money. And hey, we're good at what we do. When you hire us, you get a team of guys on your side that know the IRS laws, and we'll fight really hard to save your money. So, if you owe the IRS a ton of cash and you want to keep it, call right now and learn for free how we can help you put it back in your pocket. 5 minutes of your time right now can save you thousands of dollars. And the best part, it's a free call, so please call right now.
Well, welcome back, everybody. This is your host, KenDFoster, and I'm talking to Don Sanders. And before we get into the Genesis piece, I want to mention to my audience that Donna has a new book out here, When Your World Ends. And it's a story. It's many stories, but it's a book that inspires faith, resilience, and renewal. Don, tell us a little bit about the book and why you wrote the book.
Well, I wrote the book exactly for the reason you just gave right before the break. I said before that I went to sleep asking God to take me to, but then I woke up one morning and I just realized his answer, at least for this season, is no. Right. And so I got sick and tired of going to sleep asking just to be told no every morning. And so I said, in prayer, I said, I'm going to have to figure out a way to keep going, because I believe that by waking me up every morning, that God was asking me to live through what I had called the end of the world as I knew it. And being an associate minister, I call myself a Bible girl. I turned to scripture. And in Genesis 1, the very first chapter of the Bible, the very first verses, I found answers. And so the first two verses of Genesis in the New King James read, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. When I read that description of the pre-creation state of the world, without form, void, and dark, it struck me that that's how I was feeling in the days following my husband's death. But by the end of the chapter, God had created the first two lives, male and female. He had blessed them, put them in positions of power, and they had entered his rest. And I was like, God, how can I get more of that than I have right now? It may start this way. In fact, the first three words, remember, say in the beginning, right? It may start this way. But how do I end up that way? And he told me to dig deeper. And so I dug deeper into that scripture, and I found a 7-step process that God followed in creating the world that we can follow when we're rebuilding our lives.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. Okay. Let's take a dive into it. But before I do that, I want to say a couple of things. First of all, if you want to get to know Don Sanders, this is my listening audience, and you can go to Don. Oops, I can't read it. Don Mann Sanders. Don, D-A-W-N, Mann, M-A-N-N, S-A-N-D-E-R-S, DonMannSanders.com. Also, you can get her book. I think you can get your book on Amazon. Is that right?
Yes, but you can also get it wherever books are sold. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, wherever books are sold.
Okay, Don Mann Sanders, When Your World Ends. When Your World Ends. Okay, it's important to get this book because there's no reason to live in that a dark place. It's a dark place when you're in grief and sadness, and we all go through it. You lose a loved one, or you lose a house, you lose something that's precious, and we feel that, right? We're human, but there are ways out, and that's the point here. So, all right, grief in sadness and all that. Okay, how does that relate again to the Genesis story? How do we get into that? Okay.
Well, like you said, we're in that dark place, but right there in verse 3, God says, "Let there be light." So at some point in time, God's going to shine some light into your situation. And so the very first step in the process is remain connected, right? In verse 2, the Spirit of God was hovering, right? And hover, the Hebrew word that's translated hovering in the New King James is a circular motion, right? So sometimes when we're in that dark place, we actually feel like we're going around in circles. And I want to tell you guys that think it not strange, right? Because God is moving in a circular fashion during that season. But at some point after that, God is going to shed light into your dark situation. And the second step is to seize the moment. And it seize the moment because we want to be ready, right? We want to remain connected to God so that when he shines that light, we're ready to move forward with him into the next thing. And along with seizing the moment as far as timing, we also want to see what it is that the Lord is showing us. The Lord will give us a vision for what our life is going to look like. And sometimes we'll have challenges with that vision. I know I did. The third step is create space to breathe and a source of water. And what that talks about is on the next day, God started creating the weather system when he separated the waters above from the waters below. And in creating weather, we often talk about weather as a descriptor of how we're feeling and our emotions. And so next, we want to deal with our emotions. When we learn what it is that we're going to do next in our lives, we might feel what I say in the book is some kind of way about it. And for me, it wasn't good. I didn't like the fact that this new picture God was painting of my life didn't have my husband in it. And I was trying to hold on to the old vision that had my husband in it. And I had to let go of that. Like you were saying in your opening about growing, right? And growing is movement. And so if we're holding on to something, we're like staying put. It's like it can be an anchor. And I'm not saying to separate from the memories. No, I'm not saying that. In fact, that's what I mean about a source of water. Memories can be a source of refreshment to us when we're doing it. But what I'm saying is separate from those negative things, those negative feelings that we have that can keep us from moving forward in our lives, especially those feelings around the next steps that we're going to take.
That's an interesting piece because, I think, it's hard for some people to get a grasp of that. So you keep the memory, but you let go of the emotion, right? So, it's like, well, how do I let go of my emotion? Because if I feel it in my body, it's kind of stuck there, And I think that's the piece that people really need to get. And so I guess my next question to you is just that, are there practical strategies and steps in the book to be able to help people rise back up?
Yeah, I found that I was moving forward without even realizing it every time I took a step to do new things, right? So if I took a class, my husband wasn't taking the class with me. And so I was taking a step forward into my new life just by taking a class. And when I took classes around whatever it was that I saw in the vision, for me, one of the things I saw in the vision was writing this book. Well, I'm a data scientist by training, right? And so I had never written a book. And even being a minister, I'm trained to be a minister, but they don't train you to write a book in seminary, right? They train you to read the Bible and teach it to people. And so I went in search of knowledge around the publishing industry, around how to craft a good paragraph and a good sentence and things like that. But every time I went and learned something new, every time I grew, like you were saying, I was growing into the new part of my life. Didn't mean I didn't remember my husband. It didn't mean that I didn't honor him in those memories. I believe writing the book is a tribute and an honor to him. When I wrote about my memories about him, it was an honor to him. But now, as I'm moving forward in my life, I'm also letting go of some of that pain. You can only hold on to so much at a time.
But, it seems like at one point when we're in grief, it's, sometimes grief can be, it's not a bad place to be, because it's like you stay there and like, you kind of feel at one point that, that's a safety place. But then, there's another part of us that goes, well, I want to have a new life. I want to let go of this. How do I, because at one point grief can just grab you and take you down. And, and then you start to feel like a victim of the grief. You're like, well, wait a second. I'm a victim of my husband leaving. Now I'm a victim of my grief. Oh, I'm not going to be there. And at one point, did you have, like an insight that came to you that said, oh, go do this? Or did you have a new vision that came to you? Or what was it for you?
For me, it was around the book and around my ministry.
Yeah.
Right. So I always went to church, even when it was painful. I did take a short sabbatical from my ministerial duties, but I still went to church.
Yeah.
Right. And for some people, they might not be able to go to church. I had a friend of mine, or the same church. I had a friend of mine during that season who also lost her husband. She had to switch churches, right? Because going to church reminded her so much of her husband that she wasn't able to make those steps that I was talking about moving forward.
Yeah.
Right. But because I had other activities in my life that were allowing me to do that, I was able to do that. But for her, it meant she had to let, right, like we say, let the pain of the memories go. She had to let the church go. And so you do have to separate from some things in order to embrace some new things.
I love it. Well, when I woke up at one point, I heard a little voice say, you got to feel the pain to make the change. But today in my life, it's different. It's feel the joy to make the change. In other words, feel what would bring me joy. Like if I'm in this grief, wow, okay, what are 5 things that might bring me happiness today? And just for today, I'm gonna do one of them. It's just a small step to get out. And like you said, writing that book.
I think that can be true for in both directions, actually, and depending on your personality.
Yeah.
If you're someone whose personality tends to wallow, right, then you're going to want to look for the joy.
Yeah.
Right. But then there are those of us who are workaholics, or those of us who are motion people. Yeah. Right. And we tend to want to bypass the pain.
100%.
But that's not healthy either.
Right.
We need to find a healthy balance where we give room to feeling the emotion. But then because feelings are temporary, even when we're grieving, we don't feel sad 100% of the time. Right. And so when that wave of sadness passes, don't say to yourself, well, I'm grieving, so I can't enjoy anything. But don't say to yourself, ooh, I enjoyed that. I shouldn't have enjoyed that. Right. Or then when you're enjoying it, say, I can't grieve. Yeah. It needs to be balanced. You need to be able to do both.
I think there's another piece to that too. And that's that piece about who am I becoming? Who do I want to become? Okay. I'm in grief. I'm going through it. Okay. When that moment of clarity comes, when you're not feeling the grief for a moment, it's that place of, okay, what am I learning? Who am I becoming? And, in 6 months, where do I see myself? Where do I feel myself? Where am I going in that place? I think there's a piece there for those that are at that level that, okay, I'm ready to rise back up. I'm ready to let go and let God. I'm ready to surrender this pain and this misery to God. You gave me for a reason. And now it's like, okay, I need to get in touch with the reason. And, and maybe I can't see it right now, but, in the Bible, Jesus always said that no stone will be left unturned. And that means that you will know the reason someday. You will get it. You will rise above out of it. But like Minister Don says, you've got to take steps. Take steps. I think that's a big piece. Okay, listen, I'm going to take a quick break. And when we get back, I do want to talk a little piece. I think, people have to, you have to have a vision. You need to get clear with what, your purpose is. You need to get educated with Don's book. And then there's another piece to that. We're going to be talking about that next piece, which is your support systems around you. And I want to know what those support systems were for you, Don. We'll be right back.
Hi, everyone watching at home. We're here to remind you that if you or someone you know were injured in an accident that was not your fault, listen up. We have live agents available right now to answer your questions and tell you how much your case is potentially worth. Hi, I'm Gina Bellich, here with spokesman and TV personality Tom Mustin with us in the Help Center. So Tom, phones are really busy over there. Tell us what kind of calls you're seeing.
Well, Gina, first off, thank you for having me here in the call center with you. We always enjoy talking to the viewers and getting folks the compensation that they deserve. We're seeing calls about all kinds of accidents, but the most common by far has been car accidents. So if you or someone you know were injured in an accident that was not your fault, give us a call right now. You'll speak with a live person. They'll answer any questions you have and tell you if you have a case and how much your case is potentially worth.
Thanks, Tom. All right, folks at home, you heard it. Take advantage of this opportunity and call now.
Hi, folks. Joe Namath here. Did you know that I wear hearing aids? I love my hearing aids, and I am here to help you get a deal on the same brand I wear.
Don't waste thousands on expensive hearing aids when you can get MD Hearing's revolutionary Neo hearing aids for just $297 a pair. The Neo is a true hearing aid, not an amplifier. With rechargeable technology many customers say is superior to more expensive models. And you can get 2 Neo hearing aids with a 45-day risk-free trial, free shipping, and free lifetime US-based support for only $297. The Neo is nearly invisible with its tiny in-the-ear canal design.
Call my friends at MD Hearing and get the over-the-counter hearing aids that I use for you.
Call now and get not 1 but 2 Neo hearing aids for just $297.
800-789-7885. Again, that's 800-789-7885.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Heal It Show. I'm so happy to be your host here. You can subscribe to the Heal It Show and also our other show, Voices of Courage, right at YouTube. Both shows are on the channel. So if you go to the Voices of Courage, you can see down below youtube.com/The Courage Network. If you go there, you can subscribe. Why is it important to subscribe? Because this show is about service. It's about helping you and your family and your friends. And one of the things you can do on YouTube is you could share these episodes with people that you care about. So we hope you'll check it out and go over there. All righty. Now I'd like to bring back my guest, Dawn Sanders. And Dawn, that supportive system, I'll just say this. I was down in the San Diego area, and I was interviewing, meeting with a lady who is creating a society to help people before they went homeless. And I asked her, I said, why do people, go homeless? And I thought she'd give me this typical answer. Well, it's usually a mental issue or drugs or alcohol. But she didn't say that to me. She said the people they come across, most of them have lost their community. They've lost their family. They've lost their social connections. And that's why they're about to go homeless. Now, I'm not going to downplay the mental and the alcohol and drug abuse, but that's a big piece. And I think there's a part here with grief that if you lose you don't have a support system, it's going to take you longer. What do you say to that?
Yeah, actually, I think there are a couple of things I really want to say about support systems. The first one is that support systems may not look the way you think they're going to look. I'm a member not only of a church, but of a mega church. And when my husband died, I was well known within that church. My husband was well known within that church. Over 2,000 people came to his funeral. So when I say well known, he was well known. And so people all over were coming up to me. Some people I didn't even know were coming up to me. They were just saying, we saw you and your husband together and you blessed us by just how you lived your life. And they were coming to share their condolences with me. But there were also a lot of people who were widows who were coming up to me, telling me that they were widows and sharing their pain with me and telling me they understood how I felt. And not that there was anything wrong with that, but they weren't the people that I felt an affinity with. Because I had had those miscarriages, I had joined a miscarriage group online. And when my husband died, these women whose husbands were still alive, because we had had a connection before my husband's death, when my husband passed away, they're the people that surprisingly, not in the sense that people don't gravitate around people, but people might have thought that I would have, found myself gravitating to the widows and looking to the widows for support. But the women who gave me support were women who had their husbands, but who understood loss because they had been through miscarriages, even though they were now pregnant, many of them, and starting their own families. In fact, right when my husband passed away, within a couple of weeks of him passing away, one of the women gave birth to their, what they call their rainbow child, right? And so I just want to say that the people who wind up being the people who provide support to you might come from the least likely of places, but I encourage you to allow them to support you if that's the place where you feel supported. The second thing I want to say about support is that new support systems, right? I said that my new life now included writing this new book, and my career before was in data science. I had developed great networks within data science to the point where I never went out without a job my whole over 25-year career. But now, as I was becoming an author, right, those people didn't know anything about writing books or publishing or anything like that. And so I had to go and build a whole new network of people that could support me in the path in which I was moving forward into.
Wow. I think that's so brilliant. And it's that place. Intuition plays a big part in recovery and tuning into resilience. And what you're talking about is a piece of that. So when I say intuition, everybody has a gut feeling, oh yeah. But most people's intuition isn't developed. Intuition is really when you're tapping deeply into the consciousness of the divine. And when you can do that, it's really 100% accurate. And when you can follow that little train of intuition to your next supportive system, I think that's a piece. It's difficult to, I would say, hear or tune into intuition when one is in deep grief. But when you get those moments of clarity, like you said, I love that, Don. Everybody doesn't grieve 24 hours a day, and as long as you're not identifying with yourself as this is the way it's always going to be, which we tend to do, like when we're sick or grieving or sad, it feels like it's always going to be that way. But when you can rise up a little bit and you tune in and you pray and you ask, I wrote a book called Ask and You Will Succeed because I realized that, it does say in scripture, Jesus said it. What's the quote? You know the quote. What is it?
If you ask not, you receive not. And
no, that's that one. That's right too. Ask not, receive not. Good.
Right.
But Jesus, he said, knock and it will be opened unto you.
That
one. You will find, ask and you will receive. Right. So, and those are principles. Those are principles that we can all, abide our lives from, Mm-hmm. So I have another question in your book here. What advice would you give someone who just started their journey with a significant loss? I think that's an important question.
Yeah. What we were talking about a moment ago when we were talking about, when you have those moments right? To not let them pass you by, because you're right, you can, especially if you're someone who wallows, right? You can let those moments pass you by. But I encourage you to not let those moments pass you by, right? And we all have coping mechanisms for how we get through loss, right? I watched way too much TV. And I did it because then I didn't have to think about what was going on. But during that moment, I had a reprieve from the pain, right? And so we do have these moments of reprieve. And I encourage people that during those moments to allow themselves to enjoy those moments. And the opposite is true too. If you're a workaholic, right? When you have those moments where you aren't working, right? Allow yourself to feel the pain. It can be viewed as one of the ways that we honor our loved one, because think about it. If we didn't have these deep connections, and not just to loved ones, to dreams, to the house we might have lost, to the job we might have lost, when we just go right by it, right, we're not really giving it the honor that it's due. So I encourage you to take a moment to honor your pain, because it's evidence of how much you cared. But I also encourage you to not wallow in it and to allow yourself to move forward.
Well, sometimes we can't wallow in it. Sometimes you got to go to work, right? You got to earn a living. There's pressures from the outside, take care of the kids, feed, do the laundry, mow the lawn, whatever it is, you're taking care of things that maybe you weren't, especially with loss of a husband, and maybe you weren't doing before. How do you balance that with your grieving time?
Well, then you have to make room for grief, right? Otherwise, it's going to come up when you don't want it to. It's going to come up when you're in the grocery line, and you don't want it to come up when you're in the grocery line. You don't want it to come up when you're at work, right? And you're lashing out at someone now because you didn't give yourself time to feel it when you had a chance to feel it. And so if you're feeling it in the shower, take a few minutes. I mean, you don't have to take all day, but take a couple of minutes to just allow yourself to feel it. I'm a firm believer that tears clean our emotional wounds. And when we don't clean out our emotional wounds, they fester like any other wound that isn't cleansed.
Yeah, like you said, they come out at the wrong time. and I love that, because, if somebody says something to you and all of a sudden you react, right? There's probably some emotion down there that you might want to look at. Okay. We're not just talking about grief here. We're also talking about, your whole life here. Right. So if you've pushed it down, okay, you're watching a lot of TV, you're out partying, you're doing whatever, just don't want to think about this. Well, then it's like Dawn just said, it's probably going to come out at the wrong time. You don't want that. Dawn, this has been an inspiring information and heartfelt conversation, and thank you so much. Final words for our audience. What would you like our audience to know?
That the Lord didn't leave them, right? We said in verse 2, at the end of that verse, it says the Spirit of God was hovering. We may feel alone, but we're not alone. He's there, and he will help us through it. Yeah. I remember the Jewel song, if I could tell you just one thing, it's that we're not alone. I think that's a great way to end. Except I want to tell you, go get When Your World Ends. When Your World Ends, go pick up Dawn Sanders' book. You can get it on Amazon. You can go take it right now. It's a soothing and nurturing book that will inspire you to take your life to the next level. Again, thank you, Dawn. And thank all of you for being here on the Heal It Show. I really appreciate you being there. Remember to go over and subscribe now to our YouTube channel. So it's at youtube.com/The Courage Network. And that's where you'll find our Voices of Courage show. Also, all of our Heal It shows are there. And so you won't miss any of these shows. Until next time, I pray that you will spend your life allowing yourself to upshift from wherever you are and be able to heal it so that you can contribute to the lives of those that love you. Take care.